record on this computer. So what I was saying about the tax plan is that for your homework on Thursday, I would love if either you did a little bit of research or you just go by what we say in class. I'll talk about it in class, but come up with whether or not you think it was worth it. What do I mean by worth it? The people who got the tax cuts, the corporations who had to pay less in taxes, was that worth it in terms of the overall economic benefit to the society, to our country, as compared to the fact that, well, because of the tax cuts, the government made less revenue in the sense that they collected less money in taxes, which means our debt went up too, right? Our debt's currently over 20 trillion and it just keeps growing and growing. That's maybe part of your counter argument if you think actually no, this tax plan wasn't worth it. Is there a quiz on Thursday or just homework? Good question, Camila. What do you think? Do you think we can do a quiz and a debate on the same day, or should I postpone the quiz till next week?
Postponing it sounds good.
Yeah. Well, I just have to warn you though, we're going to move on to a new topic. So it may sound good to just always postpone the quiz, but I'm not going to postpone the lectures or the discussions or the exercises. So the more we postpone it, the more you're going to have this sort of crossover where what I'm teaching you that day, let's say we have it next Tuesday, it'll be whatever the next topic is. And I don't know why I'm forgetting income inequality, I think. And then your quizzes will be over debt and taxes. If that's okay with you, we can, I'm okay postponing. It's the question of, also there's people who are going to be debating, and is it not fair for them to have to prepare for a quiz and a debate on the same day? It's kind of a lot. So I think it's fair. I used to have this class Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and it just sort of worked better that way because we could just have the debates on Friday and like, that's it. But I can't do that anymore, I don't think. So what should we do with quizzes? What do you guys think? A week from today or Thursday? Joseph, you still think a week from today is better? You're frozen.
Sorry, yeah. My computer kind of froze, yes?
Yeah, you want to go for a week? What do you, anybody else in the class have an opinion? You want to wait and have this quiz Tuesday, I mean.
I have a question.
Sure.
Can you make the quiz like the whole day Tuesday and just time it? Sorry, not Tuesday, Thursday. So we have maybe 12 hours to do it.
12 hours?
And then just have like 30 minutes or so to complete the test. So we have to
like a take-home quiz.
Yeah. Instead
of what? I could do that. You guys want to do that? This way it won't interfere with class time, and I'll give you plenty of time and whatever. I'm okay with that.
Okay.
That's a good compromise. Good job, Joseph. You saved it. You saved the Christmas miracle. No, it has nothing to do with Christmas. Oh, here comes Nick. It's interesting. He's the Nick is joining us now. It's interesting because you're the one who's scheduled to debate on Thursday, and we've been sort of talking about that a little bit. Also, you're right. As of right now, you do not have a debate opponent. I'm wondering if Mackenzie is available to do it. I don't want to force her to do it, but if she's willing to, that would be cool. If not, you may be just going against me, Nick. And Mackenzie will have to find she can do it. Seriously, that's awesome. You're going to have to actually be for the tax cuts. I don't know if you personally are not for the tax cuts, but it should be okay. I promise that I will grade you objectively based on whether or not you've given economic arguments that support your side of the debate, even if you don't personally debate. Believe in them. So just to help you out, Mackenzie, I think there's one. What are you going to want to talk about? you're going to want to talk about uh, stimulating economic growth. Just look online, try to find some research that will support this idea that by giving tax cuts to higher income earners and corporations, letting corporations keep more of their money uh, may have a positive benefit to everyone in the sense of um, if they reinvest that money in their business, or if they hire more people, that helps us. Or if jobs that were formerly in Ireland is a place where Northern Ireland gets a lot of our corporations. If they come back to America, we get some of that money. That could be good for us too. Anyways, I apologize. It's short notice. We had this debate, not debate. We had this process of coming up with what debate you're going to do, and I think you just missed out on that a little bit. But is that okay, Mackenzie? Can we count on you Thursday? She says she can do it.
Yeah, I can do Thursday.
Thank you very much. You have to go against Nick, and Nick seems a little bit like a policy wonk. So I don't envy you that. But once again, it's not a competition. I'm not going to say, okay, now how well did you do compared to him? I will just purely grade you on your own performance, also how much preparation you put into it. Unfortunately, this is it's an economics class, and I'm an economics professor. So I'm not just, I keep admitting this guy. I'm not just grading you on how good of a speaker you are, how well you present yourself. I think that's a great skill for you to learn. And I want and encourage you to, if that's something that you need to work on, maybe practice a little bit and try to think about how well you can present your material. But most of the grade, like 80% of the grade, is just how good are the economic arguments that support your side. Okay. Just don't want you to be afraid. Great. Thank you, guys. And the rest of you, please write something about that in your homework. Here's what I want to do right now. I want to get taxes out of the way. What do economists say about taxes? Are taxes good things or bad things? What do you think most economists would say? Sorry?
Depends on which economist you're listening to, but a lot of them will argue that they contribute to deadweight loss in competitive markets.
Would they contribute to competitive markets? I don't get
that.
They
contribute to deadweight loss.
Okay.
And that's at its most negative when you have a perfectly competitive market.
It's at its most negative when you have I don't know if I agree with that. Maybe you're right. But does everyone know what Nick means when he says deadweight loss? It really just, here's how you should think of deadweight loss. It's potential gains from trade that don't occur. What do I mean by that? What is a gain from trade? If I can make something for $1 and you are willing to spend $2 on that thing, it only costs me $1 to make it. It's worth $2 for you. There's a gain from trade there. We should engage in trade, because if we do that, it's like $1 worth of surplus has been created in the world that didn't exist before. That's what that trade surplus means. And a deadweight loss is when, for some other reason, we do not engage in this trade. I could have made this thing for $1 and you could have bought it for $2, but something got in our way and said, no, it's not going to happen. That's called deadweight loss. So how can taxes cause deadweight loss? The answer is, on the margin, it sort of changes your incentives for buying and selling things. It's maybe good to think about a big purchase like a car, like a Tesla. I know how much Teslas cost. I test drove a Tesla Model 3 in, was it January? Late December or January or something. It was very COVID safe, like hardly interacted with anybody. I just got in the car and started driving around my Tesla. It was pretty cool. I don't own it, but I drove it. I know it costs a lot of money. It's like $40,000 total, approximately. If you think about the tax burden of that car, it can actually be pretty high. You could be the type of person who would buy it if it only cost $36,000. But if taxes and other fees and everything else made it 40,000, then you decided not to buy it. So you can be the type of person who's right on the margin, not really sure if I should get it or if I shouldn't. And those taxes, if they're high enough, they can make you say, I don't want to buy it. And that's a deadweight loss because there was somebody willing to sell you a Tesla and you were willing to buy it at one price, but because of the taxes, you decide not to. Okay, that's one bad thing about taxes. They cause deadweight loss. Anything else? I have slides about this, but I prefer just to chit chat and, just rapping with you guys about some taxes. Yeah, deadweight loss is one thing. Anything else that's bad about taxes? That an economist would say, reason why we shouldn't have taxes. How about income taxes? Are they good? Are they bad? What's happening there? Any opinions? We have an income tax in this country. It's actually one of our constitutional amendments was to create a federal income tax. Before that, there was no income tax. Do anybody know when that was? It was in the 1800s sometime.
I think it was during the Civil War or around the time of the Civil War.
I think you're right. Like the middle of the 19th century, we ratified an amendment to the Constitution that created a federal income tax. And that's why we all have to pay money every year to the IRS, or it's automatically withheld from our checks, our income checks. Is that a good or bad thing, according to economists? In terms of the overall economy, let's look how that affects the overall economy. What do you think? It's kind of hard to say, isn't it?
Just going off a whim and just with no research, I would say I would rather there not be an income tax because we pay so much taxes in other areas. And if we don't have an income tax, we have more money and we can spend more money.
Okay, so this is the economic argument you might hear, that if you allow people to keep more of their money, what are they going to do with it? Spend it. At least, the MPC, marginal propensity to consume, is pretty high in this country, 0.6, 0.7, up to 0.8. I don't know what, it's pretty high. So that's maybe what Joseph is saying here. If you allow people to keep more of their money, they'll spend more of it. That could help the economy grow. Even if they don't spend it, generally, people don't just take their money and put it under their mattress in the form of cash. That's bad. That's the worst thing you can do with your money. Usually, if you don't spend your money, you save it in something that can be still used for some other type of investment, right? Even if you put your money into a savings account in a bank, that bank is going to turn around and invest that money somewhere. So it's still helping the economy. So that's true. So that's one reason economists would be anti income taxes. They say, well, we should have lower income taxes because every dollar you take away from a consumer is less money available to buy goods and services, which will ultimately contribute to the production of goods and services in this country. And that's what we want, economic growth. So, okay. There's another point I can think. Oh, Nick, do you have a point?
I was going to say that there's an argument to be made that taxes could be a good thing in terms of addressing market failure.
Ooh, okay, very good.
So if we view wages as a good, that if we model wages on like a simple demand model or something like that.
Okay.
And we maybe that's the wrong way to explain.
You mean a labor market, right?
Yeah.
The market for labor. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So like if the underlying assumption that people are paid based on the value of their labor alone, and if we assume that that's efficiently allocated, then yeah, it would make no sense to tax people. But if income is not efficiently allocated and it tends to skew more towards the top, one thing that there's like a growing body of literature that suggests that income inequality actually acts as a drag on growth. And so a progressive income tax system could correct some of that and help with growth in the long run.
You've added the word progressive.
Yes, that's important.
Okay, so implicit in, I think, your argument is that the government needs to generate tax revenue somehow. The question is, how will they generate the revenue? With a flat tax or with a progressive tax. And I agree with what Nick is saying, that you could argue the economic growth for the whole country will be better if the tax burden is more progressive, because the people who are lowest income earners are more likely to spend that money. And if you let them keep more of their money, they'll spend more of it. I totally agree with that. That's a little different than just what I was asking, which is, in general, what are the negative things involved with tax? I guess I didn't say positive or negative, but the impacts of taxation. I think economists generally would say taxes are necessary in order to have a functional government. You have to raise money somehow with taxes, but every way that exists of generating tax revenue causes some negative effects on the economy, except for maybe what I thought you were going to say, Nick, is a Pigouvian tax, which is done to correct for a negative externality. So if there's something that causes a lot of pollution, or something that has a negative externality, you may want to tax that thing, not just to get yourself money, that's one benefit, but also to stop people from doing it as much. So I totally agree with that. Forgetting about Pigouvian taxes, economists would say, yeah, every type of tax has some kind of negative effect. And you're really just looking for what combination of taxes causes the least negative effects on the economy. And so sales taxes are not great because they have deadweight loss. Income taxes are not great because you're taking away consumers' spending power. There's one more thing that economists, at least one more thing, that would say is a negative aspect of income taxes. And maybe you've heard this or not. It's sometimes a labor economist would call it the labor-leisure trade-off. And if you have an income tax, it distorts this trade-off. What do I mean by that? Well, anybody who's choosing to work, they're doing it because they would rather have the money from working than they would from the free time, the leisure that they would have not working. But the argument is like there's some trade-off there where yes, I might provide more labor, but also I'd rather have more leisure. And the amount of income that I generate from my labor is exactly what determines what this sort of trade-off is. So let's say you're without any taxes, there's a certain amount of labor that you choose to provide. If the income taxes make the labor, the benefits of your labor go down, you will choose less labor. You will actually choose more leisure because the benefits of leisure hasn't changed. When you think of leisure, you should think of like getting to sleep in the morning, right? Do you have to wake up at 7 a.m. to be at your job at 8 a.m.? That might just be annoying to you. And if you work somewhere else with like part-time hours, less hours, maybe then you don't have to wake up so early. And that's part of what this captures in terms of labor versus leisure. The benefit of sleeping in is the same whether or not there's an income tax, but the benefit of working goes down if there's an income tax. So sometimes economists say, this is why it's not so good to have an income tax. It maybe makes people choose not to work as much. They say the same thing about unemployment insurance or any sort of benefit you get for not working. There's an argument to be made there. That's if you want to make people work, which is a question of itself. Let me see what else I wanted to say about taxes. Let me share my slide with you. I think we're done. We're done with the discussion part of the meeting. Let's go to the PowerPoint part of the class. And that is slideshow. No, slideshow. Current slide. Okay, here's a little graph I made of how the government gets its taxes. Right now, I'm just talking about the federal government, which doesn't have a sales tax. Did you know that? The federal government doesn't collect any sales tax. It's the state governments that collect state sales tax, sometimes local governments too. But they do sometimes have what's called an excise tax. And that's like a sales tax on particular types of things that are often sold, throughout the country, not just in one place, and often something that they don't really want you to buy too much of, like liquor or cigarettes or, something. They might put a tax on that. Sometimes gasoline is taxed. So all of that's called that. What's the biggest form of tax revenue? It's income tax, the federal government. But right behind it is payroll. You should also kind of think of that as an income tax, because it's money that's taken out of your paycheck by your employer. It's still money that you don't get. That's really the main two things for the federal government. Corporate taxes, which is what we think about a lot, they're actually relatively small portion of the federal government's tax revenue, corporate taxes. And so there's this reading I wanted you to do. Maybe you've done it already. If you haven't, something I could ask you about on the quiz. It's called Taxing the Behemoth. And the author of that article, his name is Robert Frank. He suggests making the corporate tax go all the way to 0%. 0% tax on corporate profits. Sounds pretty extreme, right? You should read the article to see why he thinks that. But that would make this whole revenue stream go away for the government. But maybe the big takeaway here is that, geez, the federal government really takes money from income. That's how they get it, from your wages.
Question?
Yeah.
Why is corporate tax so low?
Because of Congress choosing to make it that low.
Yeah, I knew it was Congress. I didn't know it was that low though, compared to the income.
So this is not what percent tax rate. This isn't rate. This is the total revenue. What, out of the 100% of total revenue of the government, where does it come from? It comes from income tax, payroll tax. Actually, only just over 10%. What is it? I don't know. 11%. Roughly 11% of the government's revenue comes from corporate taxation. You may argue that is way too low. Things like Amazon should be paying a lot higher corporate tax rate. Things like, Boeing and all of our major corporations in this country should have to pay a higher tax rate. I would caution you, though, to just instead of just thinking corporations are these entities which deserve to be taxed really heavily. That may be your first instinct, but there's some economists who make good points and that talk about the other benefits of corporations that you may have some unintended consequences by overtaxing them. By taxing them too much, they will change what they do in response to that. They will maybe leave the country. They will change the way that they even report profits, right? But it's something to think about. I mean, I'm not agreeing or disagreeing with you directly on that. But yeah, good thing to point out that, man, only 11% comes from corporate tax. This is a bit old, but it hasn't changed too much. I'm sorry, I need to update this. Let's go on. What happens when taxes are levied? What's the bad stuff about sales tax? We already talked about this, the deadweight loss. And that a lot of people think a sales tax is regressive, I think. You know why a sales tax is regressive? It's because as a percentage of tax burden, poor people have to pay more compared to what their wealth is and how much of it is spent in sales taxes. They generally spend more of their money on goods that have to be taxed, and so that makes it not just progressive, or not progressive, not just flat, but the opposite of progressive, which is regressive. And some people would argue that that's another bad thing. If you let sales tax, like somebody, if they argue we should have sales taxes go up to 20%, 25%, let's just keep increasing the sales tax, you would have to wonder how regressive exactly that is. Should you worry about this? Excessive tax burden, it's just an economics term I thought I would throw in there. That's when the welfare loss is bigger than the tax revenue. And that would only happen with a certain type of demand. Elastic or inelastic, what do you think? If the demand is elastic, would we have a huge tax burden? Or if it was inelastic, would we have a huge tax burden?
Are you talking about demand for income?
No, I'm talking about demand for a product. So let's talk about a product like, what's a really inelastic demand for a product is like cigarettes. People who are addicted to nicotine are willing to pay whatever they have to get their cigarettes. What's an inelastic? No, sorry, that was inelastic. That was inelastic. Elastic demand was something that people might buy, but they could easily substitute for something else if they wanted. You know, it's a good example.
Ice cream.
Ice cream is pretty elastic, I think. If you really taxed ice cream, people would probably substitute for something else. Certainly frozen yogurt. If you didn't tax frozen yogurt, but you did tax ice cream, you would see a lot of this substitution. So yeah. And the burden, you may think that the burden is higher on the cigarettes in terms of the loss of welfare, but it's not. It's actually on the elastic one, because that's where more trade stops, right? If you tax ice cream a lot, and it really means people just completely stop buying ice cream, that's a really devastating thing for the market for ice cream. Whereas if you tax cigarettes a lot, the people in the market are going to hate it. They're going to say, dang you government for making me pay more for my smokes, but they'll still pay it. And in terms of the loss of welfare, it will be smaller. In terms of there will be fewer deadweight loss because of it. Okay, we got to go on. Let's go on to income tax. I already talked about this, right? Lower consumption. That's the main thing. Like economists don't like it. The labor leisure decision. I already talked about also. Some economists actually favor a net tax payment or a credit. Milton Friedman was in favor of this. He's a very conservative economist, I would say. And he supported this negative tax because he wanted to encourage people to work. And if they worked somewhere where their income was particularly low, he thought they should actually get instead of a tax payment, they should have a tax credit. They would actually gain money. But the idea was that at every point you still wanted to work more, but it was a way of providing, it was an anti-poverty measure to say, well, it's a social safety net that we provide to everybody, but you still at every point have this incentive to work more because, it's not a 100% tax payment, right? So it's not like you could not work at all and get just as much as somebody who's working, but it does sort of smooth out the difference between the low income and the high income workers. Okay, but what do you need to know about income taxes? Generally, economists are against them because it leads to this lower consumption, because the consumer has a higher multiplier than the government. In other words, when the consumer spends money, and this is debatable, but I think when the consumer spends money, it goes to somebody who will then maybe spend it again. And that person might spend it again. That's called a multiplier or multiplier effect. Whereas if the government keeps your money and spends it, it's probably not going to go to somebody who will spend it quite as much. That's debatable, but. Guys have any questions about that? Why economists are against income taxes? And okay, this is the one that I want to talk about later, maybe. Once you've read Taxing the Behemoths, if you haven't already. What are some issues? Maybe if you tax corporations too much, they might move overseas. Uh-oh, that would be bad for us. If you tax them, they get less in dividends and investments in growth. Sorry, what else of this do I want to talk about? Tax incentives and loopholes. Loopholes are bad because it allows people to get around something that you wanted them to do. But tax incentives can actually be a good thing, can't they? If you provide a tax incentive, let's say for buying an electric car, I think Virginia is really thinking about this, increasing the tax incentives for buying a electric vehicle. that might actually help the country achieve some goal. So a tax incentive, if you do have, let's say, a certain tax burden, but then you provide incentives to reduce that tax burden, that is one way of nudging people or corporations into doing something that is better for everyone. And so this actually could be a benefit of having taxes and providing tax incentives. Yeah, loopholes are bad. We don't want people to find ways to avoid taxes using loopholes, but we do want to provide them with tax incentives for the right type of thing. So it's unclear. There's a trade-off there. Let me just say what the Warren Buffett rule is. Warren Buffett is a billionaire, and he came up with this very simple rule that says, whatever your tax rate, your overall tax rate for a billionaire should be at least as high as the secretary who's working for the billionaire, which is, in other words, there should be a minimum tax rate. In other words, if you made $100 million, there should be no sorts of incentives and loopholes or, corporate, what's it called, capital gains. Capital gains is a way to measure how much money you made just in terms of, your portfolio goes up in value, and that's called a capital gain. You shouldn't be able to earn whatever money you did earn. You should have to pay at least a minimum tax rate of that. That's equal to what a person who earned all of their money just through wages, whatever they had to pay, the billionaire should have to pay at least that. And he's a billionaire, and he supports that. So this is a rule that would change a bit how these taxes are generated if we supported that. Okay, are we done? Here's some notes on taxing the behemoth. Maybe let's talk about this later. Now I want to go to the debt. Philip asked a question, so let me see. Oh, sorry, Tony asked a question too. In taxing the behemoth, what does it mean to repatriate? Repatriate means to come back to this country, some investments or some capital. So if there's, $100 million invested in China, and that money gets repatriated in the United States, it's like that capital is coming back to this country. It's capital that was from the US, invested in China, and now it's coming back to the US. I think that's what I think repatriate means. Are taxes necessarily entirely bad for economic growth? We learned day one of macroeconomics that government spending does go into the GDP equation. The government gets money from spending from taxes. That's a good point. And I sort of glossed it over, that consumer spending was somehow better than government spending, but maybe it's not. Maybe actual government spending is just as good as consumer spending. I don't really have a good answer for that. You can look at studies that try to measure consumers multiplier versus government multiplier and see which one actually stimulates the economy more. I guess I thought it was consumer, but I don't know. It's certainly a good counterpoint to what I was saying about how income taxes are bad for economic growth. Not necessarily. If the government does something with those taxes that stimulates the economy even more than what a consumer would, then Philip's point is correct. It's actually better to do that. But what if the government spends it on something that doesn't do that? Like wars, for example. Generally, wars are destructive. They don't help. I mean, maybe it's good for the people who buy, the people who sell machines of war, but in general, I don't think it's good for the economy. It's much better to be spent on something like infrastructure that would help our economy grow. Okay, the reason I want to sort of hurry along is that I want to play a game today. And the game today is looking at what role the debt has on certain aspects of our economy. Because if we want to, sort of taxes and debt are very closely related. The reason we need to get taxes is so that we can control our debt. if we keep cutting taxes, which is what we're going to debate on Thursday, if we keep cutting taxes, our debt is going to grow higher and higher. And I want to know more about what the consequences of that are. So I'm going to show you where to go.
Problem is, the more tax we collect, the more spending we do instead of less spending.
Yeah. So if you keep spending fixed, then what I said is true, which is the more taxes you collect, the lower your deficit or lower your debt becomes. But if what Joseph said is true, then people might just keep getting more and more. Okay, so the game we're going to play is called Hedge Fund Manager. And I want to know who is going to play this game. Maybe I should have everyone who's here play. Everybody who wants to play can play. And I will tell you how to play it. You are going to be a hedge fund manager who's been given like a bunch of money. You have $100 million to invest. The only decision you have to make is what fraction of your hedge fund do you want to put into a safe government bond investment, and what fraction of it you want to put into a risky, corporate bond or corporate, stock, mutual funds, things that are indexed according to the growth of the economy. That's a risky investment, whereas the government bonds are pretty much a safe investment. So I will tell you exactly how your payoff will be determined in just a bit. Maybe right now, though, I'd like to get the number of people who want to play this game. Should I just write everyone down? Does anybody not want to play? I don't want to put people down here who are not paying attention. That would be bad. I'm just gonna. I sort of have a list of participants. They're in alphabetical order. I have Anna, Camilla, Charlotte, Dorian, I believe. They're all women. 5 women in a row. Paula, 6 in a row. Jacob, okay. The dudes are represented. James. They just have lower alphabetical first names. Gibran, Joseph, Christina. So I'm adding your names to this, and that means you are one of the not Mackenzie. You're one of the hedge fund managers. As you can see, there was more people here today than there have been in previous times when I played this game. Philip, Samuel. Alphabetical order just looks nice, doesn't it? Tony, that's it. Okay. So these are the people playing. You know what? I'm gonna insert these rows, and I'll put your names there. And I'm gonna copy these down. This one too. I'm just adjusting the size of my spreadsheet to account for the number of players we actually have. And I would love for you to be able to see everyone on the same screen at once. I'm not sure if that's going to be true though. Okay, and see you 37. Oh, that's good. So here's how it works. Do you see this number in yellow? That is a random number between -10 and 40. And that is going to be the yield you get from the private investment of your portfolio. So Anna, you're alphabetically first. So let's use you as a guinea pig. Let's say you decide to go 50-50. You put 50% of your portfolio into private, 50% into the public. Oh, it says 1 minus private. So 0.5, 1 minus 0.5 is 0.5. What would you get in this particular case? You would get 0.5 times this yellow number, which is 23.82. You get half of that plus 1/2 of this Average bond investment. Oh, bond investment yield. You would actually get 0 from that. Right now, the bond investment is really, really low because everybody is in the bonds. Wait, something seems wrong about this. Let me see. E4, 30, E5. Oh, okay. Yeah. It's just really low. 0. So I want to contrast this with, okay, so look at the average bond investment. What? I'm sorry, guys. This number should be changing and it's not. Oh, I don't have any debt. That's what it is. My bad. Let's say we have a current debt of 100. Got it. Okay, fix this problem. The debt is going to be determined by a professor, me. Right now, the government of this country, say it's the US, has a debt of 100. And what does that mean? That debt has to be paid off by people who buy bonds. And you guys are the hedge fund managers of like all the capital in the country. If you stop buying bonds, the price of those, so what will that do? Your average bond investment, if it goes up, it is actually going to reduce the bond investment yield. So this is a relationship I want us to understand because it's a real life relationship. The more people who buy bonds, the less the yields on the bonds. This is really just supply and demand. The more people who want the bonds, more people who buy the bonds, the less money they have to give you as interest. That's the yield. Whereas if very few people buy bonds, that means they have to make them more attractive to everybody and they have to give you a larger yield. So here's the case where, so average bond investment is really just the average of these safe bond numbers. Right now it's 0.47. That means the bond yield is 5.21. Why should you care about this bond yield? Because that's what you'll get from the part of your investment that's not in the private. You can't determine what number you're going to get in the private. It could be as low as -10 and it could be as high as 40. How about your bond investment yield? Well, you yourself don't have a big incentive, don't have a lot of control over that. All you are is one person. Let's look at Anna now. She's going 100% into the risky. If she instead goes 100% into the safe, what happens? So actually it did have some effect, some small effect on the average bond investment, 0.53, and that changed the bond yield to 4.81. Whereas let's look back again what it was before. Right now the bond yield is 4.81. When Anna goes all into the risky and away from the bonds, it goes up to 5.21. So each person has some effect on that. Okay. But your incentive, of course, is to get the highest payoff you can for yourself. I'm going to give you these as real points for the class. It's part of my like participation and exercise points. So I've been accumulating for a few of the things we've done in this class. This will be one more thing that we do in this class that's worth points for you. And I just would like for you to ask me a question now if you don't understand how this game works. I'm going to ask you to really just have to give me a number between 0 and 1. I'll ask you what percent you want risky. So if you tell me I want only 20% in the risky, then I'll do this for you, for Anna, 20% risky, 80% safe. Your payoff in this case is 1156. And that's because the 2% risky, wow, there was a huge yield in the private market. So these, compared to Camilla, who was all risky, she would have earned 38 points in this, and you would have only earned 11. The reason she earned more is because she took a larger risk. Now, let me just keep looking at cases where maybe, oh, look what happened now. negative 9.61. In this case, Anna still made some money. She made 1.99 because of the the safe investment still came through. It had a yield of 4.88. So she made some money from her safe investments. And the risky investments, yes, she lost some money, but didn't lose that much. Whereas someone like Camilla, who was all risky, lost a lot of money, negative 9. You were going to wish you hadn't come to class. You're like, darn, I participated in this game and I just lost money. I'm losing my participation points. That could happen to you if you're too risky and you lose points. But of course, you want to take some risk, don't you? You want to try to, well, let me talk about the expected value of this. What's the expected value of something between negative 10 and 40? You guys think? On average, what does the private investment yield give you? The average of negative 10 and 40, which is 15. I'll just tell you, 15. On average, this private investment gives you 15, but it's risky. Well, what about the bond yield? Right now it's giving you something like 4, 5. So the private is giving you 15, which is better than the bond, which is only giving you 5. But there's a risk, and I want you to consider that risk when you make your decisions. So we can use the chat for you to make your first round decision. I'd like to play this game 5 rounds. If we don't have time, we won't play all 5 rounds, but let's see how many rounds we can get. I'm going to delete these, and then so what I want you to tell me is how much of your portfolio do you want to put in the risky investment. So right now it looks like the bond investment is terrible, only 2.86, but that's because it thinks everybody's going all into the bonds. Let me just show you how high could it be? Everybody does in the risky. How high could it be? 20, right? You could actually be earning 20 from the bond investment yield if nobody invested in the bonds. The reason the yield on the bonds in this case went so high because nobody's buying bonds, and the government is like, oh crap, nobody's buying bonds. I better give them a really high yield. And that's what's happening in this example. But remember, this will be determined by you, not by me, by you as a class. And so I'm going to look at your chat right now. Maybe I think some people are already chatting. So tell me how much you want risky. Good. Tony says 0.7. Got you down, Tony. Fabliha wants 0.9. She's taking some risks here. To the moon. Charlotte, 0.8. You guys are willing to take these risks. You know, you could go negative, right? I'm going to actually take these points away from you if you go negative. You're going to wish you hadn't come to class. Christina, 0.43. Jacob, 0.78. Joseph, 0.85. Got a lot of players today. Thank you. Mackenzie, 0.6. Anna, 0.45. Mila, 0.4. Philip, 0.7. Sorry, this is taking so long. Dorian, 0.5. 4.5. Samuel, 0.75. You guys want to take that risk because on average you're getting 15, and you think that's better than the bond. You probably get less than 15. That's fair for you to think that. Lauren is going 0.3, and Hala is also 0.3. You guys may be the safest people in the class so far. It's 0.3. Peter is 0.35. Okay, and Nick 0.68. Gibran 0.67. And that's everybody. Did Mihawk ever tell me anything? You may be eliminated from the game. You did not send me a message. Oh, no, she sent one. 0.72. Okay, this is it. Now, it's going to show you something in yellow, but that's not it. I'm going to randomize until we get the yellow. So don't get too freaked out by whatever the yellow is. 8.18. That seems pretty natural. But the bond is determined now. The bond, on average, 40% of the capital went into the bond market for the class. And that determined the yield by this formula, the debt, which is 100 divided by 5 plus 30 times the average bond investment. That's where the 5.93 came from. So now I am going to determine your payoffs by, I'm going to put a word in here like round one or something, or just randomize. And after I click the enter for randomize, it's going to re-randomize this number. Okay. Everyone understands? So if it's a high yellow number, then everybody who is risky is going to do well. If it's a low yellow number, then the people who were safer are going to do better. Let's see what's going to happen. Oh, the safe people are going to have a higher payoff. That's okay though. Did anybody completely lose money? Nobody did. Oh no. How do I? Sorry, copy. I missed Anna, who's 2.98. And I wanted to paste special values only. There we go. Sorry. All right, so I've recorded, ABI was 0.4 and the debt was 100. Okay, how much time do we have? Okay, so those are your round one earnings. The good news is nobody lost money. Okay. Sorry for that you really didn't earn that much. Even the people who were in the bonds didn't earn that much. The bonds weren't that attractive. Here's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to change the level of debt. The debt is now 300. What happened? Reckless spending by the government has driven up the demand for debt, for bonds. That means your yield is going to be 3 times what it was before. Because this debt is in the numerator of this fraction. If it used to be 100, now I'm just multiplying it by 3, it'll be 300. Does anybody want to see what it looks like for other possible things? I have this, oh, come on, move. I have this Desmos thing. You can see y equals 300 over 5 plus, is it 5? Come on, it won't go back. 5 plus 30 times x. Okay, and here I want to zoom out. Well, it's not that great. So the only thing that matters is between 0 and 1. And I think there's a convenient way for me to change that. If not, x should only go between 0 and 1. Okay, so what you're seeing here is the potential bond yields. Okay, so if everybody buys bonds, the yield will be something less than 10. But if nobody buys bonds, the yields will be a lot higher, something like this high. It all depends on what you do. But remember, the average of the stock, the private, is only 15. So you could actually get more. You don't really know, but you might actually get more of a return than the expected stock just by investing in the bonds. It depends on what everybody does. Okay, do you understand this graph? On the y-axis is the bond yield. On the x-axis is the percent in bonds. So if 100% is in bonds, that would be your yield. It'd be less than 10. But if, let's say, 40% is in bonds, that's what it was the first time. It was 40%. It would give you roughly a yield of 18. Okay. Now let's do it again. Let's do round 2. I don't think we're gonna have time for 5 rounds, but we'll at least have time for a round 2, and which means I need to go back to the chat and see what you guys think. You're allowed to, of course, you're allowed to do something different this time. Let's see, who was the last one? Mihak was the last one. So Charlotte is the next one, and she's doing 0.38. I'm also curious as to how you change from one round to the next. The only difference here is that the debt went up. And because the debt went up, the yield to this bond goes up because they have to. in order to attract people. James, it looks like you said 55% risky. That's right. Peter, it looks like you said 0.35. Joseph's 0.2. I'm sorry for this data entry part of the class. It's probably the most boring part is to watch me enter your data into the spreadsheet. Jacob, 0.82. Jacob, you want to take this big old risk, huh? All right, 82% risky. McKinsey, 4.5. Milla, 4.835, I mean. Let me know if I get your number wrong for any reason. Gibran, 4.3. Anna, 0.3. I'm almost done. Hala, 0.38. Jacob, we double down. Dorian, 4.2. Lauren, 0.25. Samuel, 0.6. Tony, 0.1. He's the safest person, I think, on here. Did I get anything from Nick or Christina? Christina's 36. Nick, you may, oh, Nick is playing 68. Okay, I got everyone's investment decisions. If there's anything wrong there, let me know. So on average, oh, what happened? It's 300 and 0.57. 300. Okay, so that's interesting, right? The debt went up from 100 to 300, and that meant more people shifted towards the bond market, 0.57. It still means there's 43% of the capital that's in the private market, but let's see whether it, okay, so your bond investment yield is 13.53. I'm going to type the word randomize again. I don't actually have to retype it, but just for dramatic effect, I'll type randomize again. Once I click enter, it's going to determine a yellow number. If that yellow number is above 13, then everybody who was risky did better. If the yellow number is below 13, everyone who is safe will have done better, right? Ready, guys? I'm going to press randomize. 3, 2, 1, go. Hey, it didn't randomize. Or is it exactly the same number? Do you want me to do it again? Well, something's happening now. It's just, is it frozen? Or is this right? Wasn't it already negative 8.88? I'm wondering if I should just go with this number because it'll be bad for some of you. Jacob, you will have lost 4. I'm thinking it actually didn't randomize. Let me change the number. Change it. Okay, I think after I hit change it, it'll change. Try again. Yeah, okay, I'm gonna change it. And this time I think it'll change. Or will it? Yes, it changed. Okay, it was 12.45, which is actually lower than the bond. So the people who were safer did slightly better, but really almost everybody did exactly the same. Control C. Now I want to paste just the values here. Values only. Okay, so now here you can see what your total earnings are for today. I want to do another one, and let's go big. Let's go huge. What if the government debt is 500? This is like real reckless spending by the government. So 500. If you look at this, I'm going to change it to 500. Look at that and compare that to y equals 15, right? Or you know what I even like to do is to say, I thought this would be easy to do. Anywhere between -10 and 40, was it? Yeah. No. There we go. There we go. See this? Let me zoom out a little bit. I like this. This is a cool program. So -10, that's how low the private investment can be versus -40. It could be somewhere in this range. But right now, the red line represents the yield for the bonds. So, you know, there are 2 unknowns. One unknown is where the blue line is going to be. The blue line can be anywhere from -10 to -40, and me shaking it back and forth shows that. But you could be also anywhere on this x-axis, and that depends on what people do. If everybody's in the bonds, it'll be over here. If nobody's in the bonds, it'll be way up here. So I'm going to give you a chance here with a huge debt, a debt of 500. Okay, let's do it. The debt is currently 500. If things stay the same at 0.57, that means your yield from the bond will be 22, which is, you would argue, is a pretty good. That's a risk-free investment, whereas the yellow number could be as low as -10 or as high as 40. Any other questions? If not, let's get your round 3 numbers, and I think we will probably run out of time. Fabliha, is this one you just gave for the most recent round? It says you wrote it at 304. How did you even know what it was going to be at 304? I guess you just knew. Fabliha, you're going to go 0.44. So you want a lot of your money in the risky. 44% of it you want risky. Nick, even with the debt of 500, which means your yield from the bond market is going to be 5 times as high as whatever it was in the first round. You still want to put, yeah, it's fine. Charlotte's going to go 0.3. She still wants some of her money risky. It's okay. James wants 0.15. Mackenzie wants 0.3. Joseph wants 11. I guess, yeah, he means 0.11. Maybe he's going to be leveraged 11 to 1. Peter, 35. No, right there, 35. Paula, 25. Jacob, 0.4. Dorian, 26. Anna, 30. You guys still want to take these risks, huh? Miak, 52. You're taking these risks. Even though the safe option is 5 times better than it was the first round, you're still taking quite a bit of risk, I would say. Camila, 0.27. But that's okay. I want you to decide. These are real points that you're earning. We want to remind you, if you lose points, you actually lose the points. Philip goes 0.5. Christina, they're exercise points, not quiz points or homework points. They're exercise points. Tony says 5%, which is 0.05, correct? Gibran says 0.09. Still wants to take a little bit of risk. I don't think I got anything from Lauren. You're going to be out this round if you don't say, oh, she said something, 0.1. Okay, that's everybody. Let's see what we got. Our average bond investment was 73. So when the debt was 500, this is what I really cared about, all right? This right here, these numbers. As the debt goes up, the amount of hedge fund managers who shift their portfolio into the government bonds goes up too. That was kind of the whole point of this exercise. But of course, the whole point of you playing is to get some points, and I want to see how many points you get. So right now, the bond investment yield was 18. How come it wasn't all the way up to 22? Remember, it was up at 22 before. It went down to 18 because more people shifted into the bond market. So the yield dropped a little bit, but it's still pretty good, 18.59. You'll only make money on your risky investment if it happens to be above 18.59. Remember, the average is 15. So it'll have to do better than average for you to earn anything in order to have benefited from the private investment. Okay, you guys ready? I think this is going to be our last round. It's already 3 to 9. Last round. I'm going to press enter, and if it changes from 503, I will accept it. Ready? 3, 2, 1. 878. Everybody who was safer made more money on that round, although it wasn't that different. Tony, you made the most. The high earner in that round was Tony. Copy, because he was the safest, and it turned out to be the best thing to do. These special values. Okay, I think we're going to stop there because it's 3:10. And I think I got what I wanted, which is this data here. Who ended up doing the best? Tony made 32 points. Ooh, 34. Who's that? Lauren You actually may have done the best. Congratulations, Lauren. With your shrewd, what did you do? Were you the safest in every round? No, I don't know. Okay, but actually there were very, very little difference in earnings. And there could have been a much bigger difference in earnings had the private investment been very negative or very positive, but turns out they weren't. So let's have a bit of a discussion here, if that's okay. What I wanted to demonstrate is with people making their own decisions. Can I stop share? Or do you want to see? You guys want to see anything more about your points earned? You can see it here. This is your number, and I'll add that to the points you've earned. Can I show everybody your points earned? I sort of have this going based on. So this is when I ask a question in class, like, can anyone tell me something? And everybody who responded, I wrote down your name and I gave you like 10 points just for saying something. And then this on February 4th, we had this beauty contest game where everyone guessed the number, and I gave you all at least 10 points for participating. And I gave Philip 20 points because he won. Good job, Philip. You were the winner of that game. So this one I will say is February 16th, and it's the hedge fund game. And whatever points you got, I will add that to this, and it'll be like a running total for the semester. Okay, so I do encourage you to answer the questions and participate in discussions when possible. But games like this are actually a good way to earn a lot of points too, because I'll probably just count this as 30. Everybody who got 37 or 34 to 27, I will put that in here, and this will accumulate for the semester. We'll play other games too. Okay, back to this class ends at 3:15, right? Yes, and it's 3:12. Philip, thanks, lol. Yeah, hey, you won. There's only one winner, and it was you. Everyone else lost. So the name of what we just found in this exercise is called the crowding out effect. I want everyone to know what that is. I'm liable to ask you about this. Of what? Of government debt. And I'll even go further on private investment. Okay, so a lot of words here. I'm typing in the chat and giving it to everybody. See what I've written? The crowding out effect of government debt on private investment. What does it mean? It means if the government is going to keep running up a bigger and bigger and bigger debt, generally that's okay, because there's somebody out there willing to buy our bonds. And as long as people are out there willing to buy our bonds, that means we can afford the debt, at least in the short run. We can afford to borrow this money. But there's still an effect of that on the economy. And that's what we demonstrated today, which is that these private investors, like you guys, you represented the moneyed interests of the country. You decided to invest more of your portfolio into these safe private bonds, as opposed to investing it in something else like a corporate bond or corporate stock. A business wants to make a small business loan, and you say, okay, I will loan you this money. Now go out there and produce something. You're less likely to invest in those types of investments when the government yield looks more attractive. So that's the crowding out effect. It's called crowding out because you sort of, here's all the money that was meant to go to private industry, and the government is like, no, I'm going to butt in and take some of that for myself. And there's of course some graphs that I could show you what it looks like in terms of a shifting curve of loanable funds. But most importantly, I just want you to have the experience that we had today, which was that as the debt goes up and the yield goes up and looks more attractive, people tend to invest more in the public instead of the private. And that's what we saw. I think that's good. You guys have any questions about that?
I got one.
Oh, go ahead.
To what extent, and I mean, I guess this is kind of a broad question, to what extent does, all right, say instead of like 500 government debt, we take it down to 300, which would reduce the crowding out effect, but we would assume then that you'd have to increase taxes, which would also have a negative effect on the loanable funds, right?
So why would you have to increase taxes? Maybe you should increase taxes, but what if you don't?
Well, I guess if we're going to assume that government spending stays static in that scenario.
Yeah, I see. So you're saying I've created this thing called debt in a vacuum when in reality it's not. That's totally correct, Nick. That this exercise is really, really oversimplification of the problem. Because
Yeah.
whenever the government spends money, that affects the economy. Whenever the government taxes you, that affects the economy. And all I've done is boiled that down to one number, and that's the debt. And it actually matters, where is this debt coming from? Is it because you lower taxes? Is it because you raise spending, or some combination of the two? And it remained agnostic about that in this exercise, because I'm doing a ceteris paribus, this fancy thing. I'm doing a ceteris paribus examination of the effect of government debt on investment, public investment. And even though you're right, in real life, there were these other countervailing effects. And in fact, it matters how you're getting the taxes. I still would like you as students of this class to be able to describe what I mean when I say the crowding out effect of government debt on private investment. If you can explain that back to me in a quiz, I'll be very happy. And remember, because of Joseph's suggestion, this is going to be kind of like a take-home quiz, I guess. You'll have a lot of time to do it.
Okay? I feel honored.
You should be honored. Yeah. Anything else, you guys? Remember, you're writing to me about the tax plan, whether you're for or against it, the 2017. I didn't have much time to look. Oh gosh, I'm really sorry. I think I should have spent more time just showing you highlights of it. Here it is in like the last minute of this class. I'll show you. No, current slide. There we go. This is what the main points of the Republican tax plan of 2017. I encourage you to look it up yourself, right? But what did it do? Reduce tax rates for businesses and individuals. It increased the standard deduction. It reduces estate taxes. That's like when you die and your money gets bequeathed to your children or something. It reduced those taxes. It repealed the individual mandate of the Affordable Care Act. Okay, so that's what you should use to base your opinions on. Do some research on your own if you can. But let me know if you're for or against this plan that already happened. Any questions about that? I'm over time. I apologize. I don't ever want to. How many points do we need for full participation credit? 100. Good question, Philip. I sort of explained this in the beginning of the class, and that was, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find somebody who has participated in at least like 2/3 or 3/4 of the exercises, and say that's full credit. And then anybody who gets more points than that will get some extra credit from that. But so the number of points you need for full credit actually depends on what we do in the class. But you can miss, so for the discussion ones, I don't look at those as you have to do those. I will look more at the exercises and see how many of those you were there for. I know this sounds very vague, but I can come up with an explicit formula if you want. It's going to be complicated, but I can do it. It will depend on the exercises and the sort of discussion things separately. In fact, I'll probably separate those into two columns, like a discussion point and an exercise point, and you'll accumulate both, and your total score of participation will depend on what you got for your discussion, which will be discounted, I think, relative to the exercise points, if that makes sense. Okay, guys, good luck on your homework. And there is a reading, the taxing the behemoth is a reading that is due for this class. And I could ask you about that on the quiz too. But I think that's it. I'll see you guys Thursday.
Thanks.
Thank you. Have a great day.
All right, have a good day.
Thanks, Professor.
Yeah, thank you.